Well, I guess you could say it is a 350Z Christmas, because look at what we have here. BC Racing DS coilovers, rear PBM Drop Knuckles with dynamic toe adjustment, and Voodoo rear camber and traction arm. You may consider that I am going a little bit overboard for the daily drifted 350Z, but my whole thought process is to put nothing but quality components on the Z to give me the reliability to drive it to the track, drift the piss out of it, and then drive it home. I know you guys have heard me complain about how I really miss how I would daily drift the FRS, but because it has the roll cage in it, I don't feel all that comfortable driving all around town, because if someone were to hit me, my head's going right into a metal bar. And that's why I'm making such an effort to make this Z essentially what I wanted the FRS to be before I was told I needed to cage the car. A little bit of backstory on that. When I got into drifting, my home track was the Orlando Speed World, which many of you guys know with all of the other YouTubers that film there. But because I was drifting there before it became like mainstream for YouTube, no, I'm not saying that I'm the hipster of drifting at OSW, but they did have a requirement that if you wanted to take that next step into drifting and get into tandem, you had to have a roll cage in your car. So I bit the bullet, took the FRS to go get its roll cage by a guy named Justin Thigpen down in Tampa, and I kid you not, a month after I got the cage done, OSW loosened up their tech regulations and said that they would allow cageless tandem drifting. I mean, in essence, having a cage just increases the level of safety, especially in tandem driving. But at the end of the day, for someone that absolutely loved daily driving his FRS, it's caged now and really not all that daily drivable. The Z, on the other hand, is ready to be ripped on, as all of you guys know with all of the 350Zs you see now on YouTube and at the track. So enough of me talking, let's go ahead and start by getting the front BC coilovers installed. Okay, front passenger side is in. You'll have to remove the strut bar. There's 6 total 14mm bolts. The bolts that hold the coilover in, 3 12mm. You will need to disconnect the front lower control arm from the front cross member in order to drop the stock coilover out. Do yourself a favor, disconnect your sway bar on both sides and keep it disconnected until you have both of your new coilovers installed. And of course, don't be like me and almost forget your brake lines. 12mm bolt on one side, and then grommets for the others that fit here and here. Okay, front suspension's completely in, all thanks to me, not Drift Dad, who is now joining me for the rest of the install.
Some of us go to church, you heathen.
But I have everything bolted back up. Sway bar is all torqued down. You will have to use an Allen key and a wrench, open-ended wrench, to tighten it down. And now that the front's done, we can go ahead and move to the back. And my thought process is, instead of getting the coilovers in first, let's go ahead and figure out the orientation of all the arms, because of the fact that these PBM rear drop knuckles have dynamic toe, meaning that depending on the orientation on how you set it up, as the car squats, you can make the wheels toe in for increased grip. So let's go ahead and figure out how all of this stuff goes. Okay, we went ahead and put the passenger side in. It took us roughly 2 to 3 hours to figure it all out because I didn't really know where all the arms went. But as far as the adjustability is concerned, if you look on the back side of the toe arm, you have this plate with different levels of adjustment. If you were to buy the PBM toe arms just by themselves, they'll come with those little clevis rods there that you'll have to replace with a Heim joint. And the thought process is on lower horsepower cars, you want to attach the tow rod from the middle to the lower end of the spectrum on the bracket here. The higher you go, under compression, it might be hard to see here, but the higher you go, so if we're gonna pretend like the suspension is compressing now, you can see, well, at least in person, that there is toe being added. And by toe, I mean toe in. So as it compresses upwards, the wheel will essentially toe in, which will give you more grip whenever the suspension is squatting. It makes sense to me, which is why I wanted to completely install it on this side before we started videoing. But we can go ahead and knock out the driver's side, and we'll show you at least a couple of tips and tricks to get all the arms in, because it did prove to be a little annoying.
Early on, yeah. But once we got it, we got it. And then I just watched.
Now, Drift Dad and I found that the hardest part to this process was getting the upper control arm into the subframe. Now, that might be in part due to my stupidity when replacing the stock bushings with solid ones. My buddy Javier and I were just literally smacking as hard as we could with a sledgehammer to get the stock bushings out. And in doing so, we might have bent a couple of these tabs where the upper control arms go and where I think the toe arm goes. And we struggled a lot with getting the passenger side in. We're hoping that we don't have that issue on this side, so let's go ahead and see. Slides right in. Upper control arm is in. Now what we'll do is take the toe arm with the clevis removed and thread in the Heim joint, since that's what's going to attach to the adjustment on that knuckle. And don't forget, these are reverse thread, so what, lefty tighty, righty loosey? Now, because I'm not going to use the stock eccentric washers because I get all of the adjustability out of my arms, Circuit Sports makes a Lockout Washer Kit. Essentially what it is, it's a bolt, a nut, and then 2 little square plates that sit firmly where there's normally some adjustment with those eccentric washers. Arm, slide it through. And you see the square portion sits in between those 2 little, I guess, protrusions on the subframe so that there's no movement there. Just put the other one on the backside, your nut, and then tighten it down. Now we'll take the Voodoo camber arm, put it in its spot. It's the toe and camber arms that are going to take these lockouts, so use those.
Ooh. Quite the haircut, Alan.
Thank you.
Did you cut it yourself?
No.
Kind of looks like it. All right.
Now, we're not going to tighten everything up just yet, so we can mess with the adjustability. Because you want to do your best to leave plenty of room for adjustment, so that whoever you take the car or your car to get aligned by, they'll be able to dial it in. Anyways, the traction arm goes right up on this stud on the front side of the subframe. Should slip right on in. Then it has another washer that goes on the inside, and then the stock bolt with another washer to hold it all in place. Oops. Now we can put the knuckle onto this Heim joint here. It is kind of a little annoying to press through. There we go. And then after that, just connect all of the other bolts. Traction arm, camber arm. Now for the toe arm, you're gonna wanna put these brackets on. They supply spacers. The rounded one goes on the outside. The one with the little straight edge goes on the inside. I can't speak to the different rotations or different orientations of these washers and what they do, because I did mirror what Chris Forsberg had on his Instagram. But you'll go ahead, take one bracket, put a bolt all the way through with one washer, and get the other bolt with one washer, put it through the other side, feed it through, and then the other spacer goes on the back side. With that tightened down, take your toe arm, adjust it out. We're gonna slide it through.
Put your spacers in first.
Oh, yep, oops, you're right. Put your little spacers in, and then slide it into the bracket. And we're gonna put it in the middle slot. There, now all of the arms are loosely in place. So, what are you doing now?
Messing stuff up. A garbage mechanic, right? I am actually cutting this shroud.
I think it's a brake shield. I don't know if it's the same thing as a shroud.
Shroud. So I'm just lining it up here to make sure I got the right cut for the second caliper system right there. So I already did the first one. This goes on that side. Just get a piece of tape, put it on there, and then I'll cut it off. Hey boy, get away! You don't have no safety glasses on.
I don't know if that was all that safe, you holding that in one hand while it's on, and then jiggling that off with the other, because if it would have came off, you could have sliced your hand.
Like I said, garbage mechanic.
Well, just because you're a garbage mechanic doesn't mean you don't know how to use
Yeah, I guarantee
an angle
if
grinder.
I would have cut my hand, that would have been the last time I cut my hand like that.
Now I feel bad because I had Drift Dad go ahead and torque down the hubs to 67 foot-pounds, but I had forgot that I am going to retain my handbrake. So to do that, let me just grab all the pieces here. I was very mindful to not lose any of them or the orientation that it goes on. Okay, it is Monday evening, got off work, immediately started working up on the Z. I don't know where I left you guys off in terms of footage from yesterday, but what I just got done doing was installing the passenger side rear coilover. Two 12mm nuts that attach the top of the coilover to the car. Now these coilovers came with damper extenders. So basically what I did is I took the damper extenders that come with the car. They come, I think, in like a foot in length. So I trimmed them down, got it to fit nice and flush in here. It just goes right up through the hole here. You might want to drill it out a little bit just so it's not so bent, because it is kind of hard to get the plastic all the way through. You might notice that there is a hole drilled here. It's because my stupid self thought that that was a location I need to drill through, which no, it wasn't. And that, folks, is why we call ourselves garbage mechanics. Because I am known to make stupid little mistakes like this. Nonetheless, let's go ahead and get the driver's side installed. Okay, it is the next evening. Got off work, finished mounting the calipers, the brakes. Everything's good to go. Pedro, my technician friend, doesn't believe me when I say that there's an obscure process to bleed the brakes on the Z.
I told you the process. How we do it.
How you do it, but
Yeah.
excuse me, sir, the forums tell me to do it another way. So it's all about, what do we trust? The technician or the 350Z forums? And I am gonna say,
He's trying to put me on the spot. I'm gonna get the service manual tomorrow. I'm gonna send it to you and then be like, yo, this is what they said.
you know what, I'll trust the technician. We'll do it your way.
No, let's do your way.
Are you sure?
Hey, it's your Z. It's not my Z.
But I took a picture today at work that the process to start to bleed your calipers, you go rear left, front right, rear right, front left, which to me doesn't make sense. Dro's way of saying, you know, you start from the caliper that's furthest away makes the most sense to me. That's what I did on the S13. But we'll go ahead and, what, Dro? We're doing the forum way or the technician way?
Hey, bro, it's your call.
Okay, forum way. Okay, wheels are on. I adjusted height as much as possible, at least what I think would work. But of course, when the suspension compresses, it's going to change. It's probably going to be too low, but it's the moment of truth, Dro.
Let's go.
I am going to be taking it to you to get aligned this Thursday,
Yeah.
though. So we'll see you again. And there she sits, way too low. Dro, I know you don't approve because it's going to be way too low to get up on the alignment rack. I'll raise it before I go and see you. But then overall, with the drop knuckles that lower it 25 millimeters, and then the additional lowering that I did from the coilover. I just didn't have the best judgment. Right now I think I'm sitting on the tire. Yeah, I am. So I'm gonna have to raise it and then roll the fenders, which will be done in due time. The fronts though, there's a little bit of a wheel gap that I could make a little bit more flush by lowering it more, but I don't think I'm gonna lower it anymore. I do have an angle kit that's gonna be thrown on in the next week or two, so that will help out my weak fitment game. But with that said, I think that's gonna be it for this one. We got a lot done on the Z, got a lot more to do, including getting a radio and then a hydraulic handbrake installed, because you can't expect me to get dual caliper knuckles and not put a hydro in. So that's something to look forward to, so make sure to subscribe for that. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and me and Dro, we will see you guys next time. Peace.